Well, welcome to the Speak with People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz, and I am so excited that you are joining us today. This podcast exists because we believe that our words matter, and we believe that healthy communication is oxygen for our relationships and our leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, on a team, from a stage, from behind a screen, however you communicate, we want to challenge you, hopefully inspire you, encourage you to always choose to communicate in healthy ways. We know that your world will be for the better when you do, and we know that it will drastically improve your relationships and your leadership. Well, welcome to today's episode. I am so very excited about it because I get to interview someone a little bit special to me. He is one of my children, so he's a bit special. But he is our second born child, and I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a second. But we are in our final week of the family series that we've been doing here on the podcast. And we've covered so many topics in this amazing series. If you've missed any of them, would just be honored if you go back either on the website or YouTube or however you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google, and listen to those. But today we finish with a really sensitive and a really important topic. And we're talking about mental health. We're talking about how to communicate about mental health. And it's so personal, and it's such an important topic because so many people are dealing with it, depression and anxiety and panic attacks. And so we're going to hear from someone today who has lived through what we're going to attempt to talk about. And this is going to be a difficult conversation, but we hope that it will really help many of you as maybe some of you struggle with some mental health issues, or you have children who struggle, or a spouse or a friend or a coworker or someone. So this one really hits home because I get to interview Bobby Raitz, and we're going to talk with him more about just his journey through a season with depression and anxiety. So Bobby, welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
Hello. It's so good to have you. Hey, in your words, could you just I can because I'm your dad and I absolutely adore you, but I thought maybe you could just give us a little bit of, a look into your life and your story through your lens.
Oh, I'm Bobby. I'm 20 years old. I enjoy reading, playing games with my friends.
Well, let me back up there for a second. Sorry. When you say you enjoy reading, we're talking lots of reading. Like, what's the track? Don't you have like a tracker on your phone or something? How many books you've read or ages or something?
For one app, I have tells me the total minutes read and total books read.
So come on, indulge a little bit. How many?
It's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. So you are a reader. Yeah. Okay, I interrupted you. Keep going.
Well, that's it about me.
I'll throw in a few things. At the height of it, how fast could you solve a Rubik's Cube?
Just shy of 50 seconds.
Okay. But could you juggle at the same time and solve? Well, keep up with that kid on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? And then you also kind of have a hobby, if I could just, to kind of take us a little deeper into your story. Like when it comes to video games and online stuff, like you love gaming and all of that.
I do.
You really do?
I do.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, hey, we're just going to dive into this, and we're doing this conversation today because I end up talking with a lot of people who are parents who have kids who went through somewhat of what you went through. Everybody's journey is different, obviously. But depression, anxiety, panic, it just affects so many people. And if you're listening today and you've dealt with those kind of things, I hope that this conversation and what we're about to dive into is healing for you, gives you some hope and encouraging. So when we kind of think about your story, I'll kind of tell it a little bit from my angle, and then you could kind of go through and correct me or, add anything through it. Mm-hmm. But probably around your eighth grade year, 13, 14 years old. We didn't notice it at the time, but we started to notice that you were a little bit more withdrawn. You wanted to be alone a little bit more, which is kind of not abnormal for, teenagers, because they're like, hey, get me away from my family, please. And we have a giant family, and we're a bit crazy and chaotic, so that was all understandable. But I'll never forget one moment in particular. We're pulling up to a baseball game, and you didn't want to get out of bed, and you couldn't communicate to us what was going on. And unfortunately, your dad responded in a very unhealthy way because I got really upset and frustrated because, unfortunately, so much of my parenting, my identity as a dad was tapped into you and your brother because you played the sport that I love and you guys were good, very good. And I coached you for many years. And so I started freaking out because you didn't want to get out of the van and your team was waiting, everything was waiting. And so do you remember that day? Like, can you take us into that a little bit more?
I do. It it was a lot of build up, like leading up to that game in particular, where I think it was the first time I sort of just snapped.
And when you say snapped, we don't mean like crazy wild reaction. It was like a powerful panic attack that stunned you.
It was a lot of emotions all at once that I didn't know what to do with. It it feels like the world sort of like closing in on you, and you don't know how to, I don't know, to escape it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what was wrong. Just trying to, I don't know, tell what was wrong with me just, ended up making me feel worse.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I don't know, something was wrong with me in particular. But yeah.
And so, oh boy, like going back to that day specifically, we're all sitting in the van. It's all 6 of us. I'm trying to get you to get out because we're already late because we're a family of 6 and we can't ever be on time. It just doesn't happen. It just can't happen. And you, full-blown panic attack. And Mom and I are trying to figure out what's wrong with you. Your brother's trying to hop over you to get out. Your sisters we're all trying to figure it out. And I respond. I mean, we've talked about this so many times over the years. I mean, this is at this point now 8 years ago or something, 7 years ago. Like I responded so miserably, yelled, was frustrated. I just didn't know. So that kind of started, in my view, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, kind of the downward spiral to just like a deeper and darker place that the depression and anxiety took you.
Yeah.
So fast forward, then you're a freshman in high school, and then things are starting to keep, going downwards. And then finally we get to your sophomore year, and then it's just, you made it through your freshman year, and then your sophomore year, it's like the wheels just came off. And, missed many days of school. And then by October of that year, that's like a couple of the infamous, like I would drop you off at the door, you would walk into the school, beeline it to the bathroom, and then that's when the panic attack would just strike you down. And so, that was you would text me or Mom and try to figure out, and we were trying to balance, like, to tell you you can do it, you can stay, you can accomplish it. And then, there were some of those occasions where you were just like, Dad, I can't do this. And I would come into the bathroom and you would be totally stunted, totally in full-blown panic mode. And, we would try to get you out of there. And so how long would it take you to recover when you had those full-blown panic attacks?
More than I would like to think, because I'd get so worked up and so, I don't know, feeling so helpless. It as soon as you get to a point where you calm down, you just feel incredibly drained. Like, I don't know, you just like metaphorically just like fought for your life. Or
yeah,
I would be exhausted and drained, both like mentally and physically. I would go to sleep pretty much right after I got home and just try to, I don't know, get away.
And you would sleep for hours, like 12 hours, 15 hours, 18 hours.
Yeah.
That's what the panic attack. And when we say panic attack, Bobby's version of it, it wasn't like big, deep, crazy, like outward, but it was like inward, you were like blowing up.
I would it would feel like I was hyperventilating. I felt like my heart was pounding. It was going to come out of my chest, and I just felt like any moment I was going to explode. And I was just trying. You try to stay calm in those moments, but it rarely goes that way. You just feel incredibly helpless. Because you don't know what's going on, you don't know what's causing it, and yeah, obviously.
And then you have family members who are trying to help you, right? Because that's all we wanted to do. But then we were freaking out because we didn't know how to help you, and then you didn't know how to communicate with us, and we didn't know how to communicate with you. So I mean, it was hell. It was just hell on both of our.
It wasn't fun.
And so that kind of started some months then of you not being able to go to school. And so mom and dad's listening, that was, I mean, every single morning. And I'm still in my phase of not knowing how to deal with this, how to work through it, how to help my son. And so I was just an idiot. Like I would come into your room some mornings, try to get you up. You would lay there silently. You wouldn't say anything. I mean, it was just impossible. And then mom and I, my wife and I would try to figure out who's going to call school this time. And so it was like, shoot, did we call early enough? We could get the answering machine. Or are we going to get somebody live and say, Bobby's not coming again? So what was it like for you during that time, knowing like, I really should be in school, but here I am months and months. I'm not in there.
I got way too comfortable in the routine of being helpless. Obviously you guys were trying to help me, but it was at a point where I didn't want help.
Yeah.
I got comfortable in our basement, and I did not want to leave. And then the longer I would, stay out of school, the harder it would be to actually go back and explain to my friends and everyone who would ask, what's wrong, Bobby, and not knowing how to tell them what was going on, and just sort of closing almost everyone out of my life. It was a bad routine I'd gotten in.
Yeah. I just can't imagine what that would have been like with your friends, like when we did get you to go back. Of course, there were idiots who would say stuff, and do all of those kind of things. Yeah. I mean, we kind of hit on it, but what do you think why do you think it was so hard to tell us what was going on?
A big part of it was, I thought, not that I was broken, but that something was wrong with me, that I didn't want to admit or tell people, because I didn't want to be, broken, or I didn't want something to be wrong with me. It's hard to tell someone that you feel broken.
Yeah.
Especially your family, let alone your friends.
Yeah. Yeah, it was hard. And there was months when, we were trying to quote unquote help, but then, especially me, especially if you're a parent listening, my help, I got impatient. I would get frustrated. I yelled at you when you wouldn't answer. And we didn't know what, we didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so being able to, do that. What was some of the things that helped you cope when you were kind of in that, like, the deepest, darkest place?
Honestly, it was, at that time, it was just YouTube or anything to allow me to temporarily escape what was going on in my real life, which led into reading or anything like that. And obviously, the few times I did hang out with my friends or had family dinners, or the few moments where I could, I don't know, live normally, helped me more than, I realized at the time. It was just hard to I don't know, continue trying to live normally when I was so stuck in a routine of being by myself and letting myself uh, stay down.
Yeah. So hearing that now, I mean, hindsight's always, I'm wondering if we should have then. Yeah, I mean, golly, because some of the times we didn't know what to do. Like, do we leave him alone? Do we leave? Do we just get his friends over here, to spend time with? Boy, that was, that was so incredibly difficult. So what was it like with your siblings at the time? Because you have 3 siblings, you guys all care for each other. You have normal sibling stuff, but, you're all living in the same house. What was it like, kind of navigating that with them?
It was rough. It was rough and fun at the same times. Fun in the sense that I had siblings that I could forget my worries and just talk normally to, but I don't know, rough in the sense that I didn't want them to think that something was wrong with me, especially my younger siblings. Because I was supposed to be the older brother who they look up to, but I was down and they just kept going up, and I was they caught up to where the help I could give them.
Yeah.
And they just kept going while I was still, left behind.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel trapped at that time?
Like, scary. I felt trapped in like this little hole that I dug myself in, that at times I feel like I could have, reached up and you guys could have helped pull me out, but it got to a point where I was so comfortable being there that I didn't want to get out.
Yeah.
I don't know. I let myself stay there.
Yeah.
Even though I had a loving family, friends, and yeah.
So what was it like having a dad who overreacted, and a mom, trying to help you, was it like, were you like, would these people just leave me alone? Did you get frustrated with us, upset? Like, walk us through that.
Oh, of course I wanted to be left alone, and of course you guys barging in, trying to help me, it frustrated me to no end, but I know it was out of love. You guys weren't just, trying to, I don't know, mess up my life, but I would get frustrated. A few times I was thankful, because there were a few times where I was pushed to go to school, to connect with friends. That did help. It was just me being overly comfortable and, I don't know, ignoring the help that you guys were trying to give me.
Yeah. Yeah. So fast forward, you saw a counselor for a long time. We saw a psychiatrist, Did any of those conversations help? Did seeing those, like medical health professionals, like help, or do you feel like, hindered? Walk us through that.
Oh, we went through a few counselors. I think only 2, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to remember the one guy's name. Dr.
I don't remember the first one.
He was like 89 years old, but he looked like he was 40.
Dr. Robin.
Dr. Robin.
The getting me out of the house and getting someone who I felt comfortable talking about my problems, because I knew they weren't, in my life, like the people surrounding my life that I could just freely talk to and not have to worry about,
Yeah.
talking behind my back, or just being able to talk to someone freely. It did help me a lot.
Yeah.
And just learning a few simple tricks, as simple as just breathing exercises to help me when I was panicking, or stuff to help me get out of my unhealthy routine. It was very helpful. I wouldn't admit that at the time. There's no way I would have, but
you were never like pain about it. Like, yeah, sometimes you just would not leave.
Yeah.
And we had to figure it out. But sometimes you were, I remember that one psychiatrist we went to that she's like scared the life out of me. She was so like, hardcore. Like she spoke and I my whole back stiffened up. But I feel like, people are in all different places when it comes to that. It sounds like what you're saying is you feel like a lot of this was you, but I know when it comes to mental health stuff, I mean, so much of it there is something that's not clicking right in your brain. And for whatever reason, so many people, if you broke your arm tomorrow, you would go to the doctors, but because there's a mental health problem, they think, oh no, I can figure this out. I don't need to go to a doctor to figure this out. Was it hard for you to like get over that at all? Or were you like, no, I need help. And so I'll go see someone.
I definitely wasn't in a position where I would have told you guys I needed to go to a doctor. Part of going to see a doctor was, admitting there was something wrong with me, but you guys getting me to a counselor, psychiatrist, it did more help than I think most things did.
Yeah.
Talking to someone who actually, could tell me like word for word what was going on in my head, that it was actually pretty normal, and that they actually knew how to help me and the steps that I needed to take to get better.
Yeah. So put yourself in my shoe, 15 years from now, 12 years from now, whenever you have kids and you have a teenage son or daughter and they're going through this. Like I've already admitted, man, I said a lot of horrible things. I mean, I didn't yell at you or those kind of things. I was just frustrated trying to figure out how to help you.
Rightfully so.
And in the beginning, I didn't quite know how to do that. But give some parents some advice on how to talk to their kids who are going through depression or anxiety or panic attacks.
Well, it is definitely important to give some personal space, obviously a healthy amount, but not coming at them from an authoritative standpoint of not necessarily like forcing them to seek help, but to, let them know that you are there for them. That you're not, just stuck in the hole by yourself. That there are people willing to help pull you out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's huge. So fast forward, we finally, in our journey, we found a place called the Amen Clinics that Dr. Daniel Amen runs. You can check out his stuff. We'll put the links in the podcast show notes. And he's a relatively famous guy. If you go on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see his videos everywhere. And so we started searching the Amen Clinics, and we're like, we got to get Bobby there. He's one of the first psychiatrists ever to, he just kind of felt like psychiatrists are the only medical doctors who aren't looking at the organ that they're diagnosing or prescribing medications for. Because we did go down the road with medications, and we didn't know which ones were working and which ones weren't. And some doctors subscribe more than others. And so we got to have this miracle journey of getting you to the Amen Clinic. We couldn't afford it. It was thousands and thousands of dollars. And so, my wife and I, mom and I, we didn't know what else to do. So we went on Facebook and we just did a video and we said, hey, would you help us get Bobby? At that point, lots of people knew. Now, I wasn't on Facebook telling everybody my son had depression.
I know.
But I bet there was also horrible pressure, though, on you when you did come to church, because I was the pastor and some people knew what you were going through. Did it ever create awkward moments where you just felt like, why do you have to tell everybody what's going on with me?
There were times where it definitely didn't help when my friends at church, I knew talking to their parents that, of course, their parents knew, and then, of course, probably their kids knew, and it was weird trying to explain to them what I was going through during the week and not just at church. That I knew that they definitely knew what was going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't like it wasn't horrible.
Yeah.
It was just
it created embarrassment.
It did.
Yeah. So we found this place. Within 24 hours, we raised like $6,500, and people from all over the country gave to this. And so this was like 3 months into COVID. So literally everything was shut down, but they still let us come. So you and me and mom, we drove to Chicago because they have an office in Chicago. They have like 8 offices nationwide. And they put you through this gamut of tests. So blood tests, all these online tests. I mean, you had to do so many. We had to do so many. And so then you go in and they make you fall asleep, and then they scan your brain. And then the next day they like keep you awake, and then they scan your brain while you're doing all of this stuff. And then a week later, we get on the phone on the Zoom with your psychiatrist, and she tells us everything about you in such an intimate, like deep, personal way that the three of us are looking at each other going, how in the world does she know these things? It was weird, right? But what she was able to do then was subscribe a very, succinct script for you. And so, I mean, the big thing was, right, they changed your diet like crazy.
Yeah.
So cut out all sugar, all carbs, all acid, all inflammation, all dairy. Like you went on this like crazy, and Mom and I went on it with you as well.
Lots of cashews.
Lots of cashews. And then lots of other exercises and breathing exercises, a different medication, and then different vitamins for brain flow and oxygen flow and all those different kind of things. And it made a ton of difference.
A lot.
So fast forward, we're 3 years removed from that. What would you say the differences are now?
Like night and day.
Yeah.
Not just because I'm older, but I don't know, getting out of the routine of living very unhealthily to living semi-healthily, it changed more than you would think.
Yeah.
That it changed, like a diet changed more than I thought would. I didn't think it would help me mentally as much as it did. But it was like I took a lens cap off, and then everything was clear. When I was healthier, I could explain things more clear. It was like the fog lifted.
Yeah.
And I just felt better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a year after it all, when we had moved to Florida, and Mom and I are sitting in this living room, we heard you laugh, and it had been 5 years since we had heard you laugh. And then the next month we heard you sing a song to your little brother, and we're like, we haven't heard him sing in forever. And then you were running, like you're still a runner. Like we like exercise, like what is Bobby doing, And then hard work, and then, moving forward, all those things were so incredibly important. And so if you're listening to this and your family members like in, just a crazy place struggling, I would highly, highly recommend the Amen clinics. I mean, they are absolutely incredible how they're able to help. Bobby, you still talk with a doctor from the Amen clinics from time to time?
I do. Not too long ago, I just had my checkup.
Yeah, I just had your checkup, and you're able to do that. So say something to a teenager. I know, maybe a teenager wouldn't listen to this, but maybe if their parent got them to listen to it, from one person who was a teenager going through this to another person who's maybe struggling as a teenager, what advice would you say, to try to help them get to that place where they're pulling themselves out of the hole?
Don't be afraid to accept help from strangers. Especially, especially your family, because 9 times out of 10, your family just wants what's best for you. You don't always have to, push yourself out of your comfort zone, but to even just taking little steps at a time to get to where, your parents or friends just want you is huge, because,
Yeah, no, that's absolutely huge. So I know we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but give some advice to parents or family members who have a sibling or, someone in their family going through this. What can they be doing to help?
Obviously just giving them the benefit of the doubt. It takes a lot for someone to admit that they need help. So just, pushing it in their face that they need help, that, there's something wrong with them, will just make them hole up even more. So just being there for them, not when you're just trying to get them out of the basement, but just to be there for them as a friend, as a family member, to just let them know that you're on their side. Does a lot more than you'd think.
Yeah. Well, I think you are one of the bravest people that I know. And after watching you walk through those 5 years, to see where you are now, people would just have absolutely no clue. I mean, your courage, your strength, your bravery, it's just phenomenal. And I know that you sharing your story will help other people, going through this, because you can't overcome it by yourself. You need help. And I've never been in your shoes. I've battled mild depression my entire life, seasons of up and down. I've had panic attacks and anxiety, but never to that point. And so, my advice would be don't diminish what anyone is going through when it comes to mental health. Be exactly what you just said. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Let them know that you're on their side. Be there for them. Your presence matters. Your words matter. And so, well, Bobby, I can't thank you enough. This was incredible of you to share your story, and appreciate what you're doing and who you are. So thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us on this podcast today. I'm going to ask you to do a favor. It really does mean the world to us when you, share this podcast. So whether you just cut and copy the link and text it to a friend, or you review it on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts or Spotify, those kind of things just absolutely mean the world. Well, as a reminder, Speak with People exists because we want to help you elevate healthy communication in your leadership, in your relationships. And so if we can do that, please check out the website, www.speakwithpeople.com. You'll find information about our coaching, our training, and our speaking, and how we are able to help you. Well, thanks again for being with us during this family series. We sure do appreciate it. This podcast exists because words matter, and we believe healthy communication is oxygen for your relationships and your leadership. So whether you communicate one-on-one, on a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we hope that this time challenged you to choose to communicate in healthy ways. We know that when you do, your world will be better. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.